Welcome to the IT Free Training video on creating a Relying Party Trust. A Relying Party Trust is created on the side that creates a claim. This essentially determines what information will be put into the claim for the other side to process. I will now change to my server running Windows Server 2008 R2 and look at how to configure a Relying Party Trust. In the previous videos, I have already installed and configured Active Directory Federation services. To create the Relying Party Trust, I will first open ADFS 2.0 Management from the Start menu under Administrative Tools. To create the Relying Party Trust, expand Trust Relationships, and then right-click on Relying Party Trusts and select the option Add Relying Party Trust to start up the wizard. Once I'm past the welcome screen of the wizard, on the next screen I need to select where I'm going to get the data that is going to be used to create the Relying Party Trust. The first option creates a secure connection on the other server and reads the data directly from the server. This is the simplest option. However, it does require a direct connection between the Federation servers, which may not always be possible. The second option will import this data from a file. If a direct connection is not available, this is the next best option. This requires the administrator to save the required information and transport it to the other server. For example, they could email the data or perhaps store the data on a USB flash drive to transport between the servers. The last option requires the administrator to enter in the data manually. But where does this data come from? To understand that, I will cancel the wizard and then open the container Endpoints under Service. Endpoints are used by Active Directory Federation services to provide a way for another server to access data or to be presented with claims. If I scroll down to the bottom, you can see the section under Metadata. If you want to export this data to another server, all you need to do is open the XML file using your internet browser and then save the XML data to a file. Now that I know where the data comes from, I will run the Relying Party wizard again and go back to where I left off. I will next enter in the name of the other Federation server that I want to get the information from. This server is in another forest, so in order for it to be resolved, I have created a conditional forwarder on this network's DNS server. When I press Next, notice that I get an error message. The server was not able to create a secure connection to the other server. The connection requires SSL, which requires certificates, so I first need to install the required certificates in the local store on both servers so that I can have communications in both directions. To do this, I will run MMC from the Start menu and then select Add Remove Snap-in from the File menu. Once open, I need to select Certificates from the list of available snap-ins. The certificate snap-in is not available as a shortcut in the Start menu, so I have to access it through MMC like this. Once selected, I next need to press the Add button to add the snap-in. Once added, I need to select which certificates that I want to manage. In this case, I will select the option Computer Account to manage the certificates that are used by the server. Once I press Next, I will be asked which computer I want to manage. In this case, I will leave it on the default option of Local Computer and press Finish and close Add Remove Snap-in. Now that the certificate snap-in has been added, I can view the certificates for the local machine. The certificate that I'm interested in is found under Trusted Root Certification Authority in the Certificates container. In here, notice the certificate for the Enterprise CA that is installed on this network. If I double-click this certificate to open it, this certificate is the Enterprise Root CA Public Certificate. Any computers that trust this certificate will trust any certificate that has been issued from this CA. This is the certificate that I need to export and import on the server in the other domain. To export the certificate, I will select the Details tab and then press the button at the bottom of the screen, Copy to File. This will start the certificate export wizard. Once I'm past the welcome screen, I need to select which format I want to export the certificate to. The default format of DER will work fine, so I will leave it selected and move on to the next screen of the wizard. On the next screen of the wizard, I need to enter in a file name to save the certificate to. In this case, I have a USB flash drive plugged into the server, so I will save it to the flash drive. Once I press Next, I will be at the end of the wizard, and then press Finish to complete the wizard, and the certificate will be exported. Now that the certificate has been exported, I will change to the Active Directory Federation server in the High Cost Training domain. Just like before, I will run MMC from the Start menu, and then add the certificate snap-in and select the options to manage the certificates for the computer account on the local computer. This will allow me to view the certificates that the server will be using with Active Directory Federation services. Before I import the certificate for IT Free Training, I will first export the High Cost Training certificate. Once this is done, I will import the IT Free Training certificate. I next need to import the certificate on both sides to ensure that I can make a connection in both directions. If I expand down to Trusted Root Certification Authorities, in the certificates container is the certificate for the High Cost Training Standalone CA. To export it, I just need to right-click it and select Export under All Tasks to start the export wizard. Once I'm past the Welcome screen, on the next screen I need to decide which file format I want to use for the certificate. In this case, the default format of DER will be fine, so I will leave this selected and move on to the next screen of the wizard. On the next screen, I will need to enter in a file name. I have already placed my USB drive in the server, so I will save the certificate to that flash drive to be transported to the server in the IT Free Training domain. Once I press Next, I will be at the end of the wizard, and all I need to do is press Finish and the certificate will be exported. Now that the certificate has been exported, the next step is to import the certificate from IT Free Training. To do this, I will close these windows and go back to the certificate snap-in. To import the certificate, I will right-click on the white space and then select the option Import under All Tasks to start the certificate import wizard. Once I'm past the Welcome screen, on the next screen I need to browse to the location of the IT Free Training certificate, which will be on the USB flash drive. Once the certificate has been selected, I will press Open. With the file name now in the wizard, I will press Next and be asked which store I want to place the certificate in. You will notice that the certificate store that has been selected is Trusted Root Certification Authorities. This store was selected because I started the import from inside that container, so I can press Next knowing that it will be stored in the correct location. Once I press Finish, the certificate will be imported. Now that the certificate has been imported, I will change back to my Federation server running in the IT Free Training domain. Now that I am back on the IT Free Training server, I need to import the certificate from High Cost Training. To do this, I will go back to the certificate snap-in, right-click the white space and select Import from under All Tasks to start the import wizard. Once I'm past the Welcome screen, I will browse to my USB flash drive and select the High Cost Training certificate. Once selected, I will press Next and then move on to the next screen. On this screen, I need to decide which store the certificate should be placed in. Since I ran the import wizard from the container that I want to store the certificate in, I do not need to change this and can press Next to continue. The wizard is now complete. When I press Finish, the certificate will be imported. Now that the certificate is imported, I can go back to the Reline Party Trust wizard. Both servers have the root certificate from the other network stored in their local certificate store, so should be able to communicate with each other. If I close the warning message I got before and press Next again, notice this time the wizard moves on to the next screen without issue. So this time the servers were able to establish a secure connection with each other using the certificates. On the next screen, I will enter in a display name for the trust. This will help other administrators identify what the trust is being used for. Once I move on to the next screen, I will need to select what the default permissions will be for the trust. By default, the option Permit all users to access this relying party will be selected. This will allow all users to access the trust, even if they have not been given access to the trust. To increase security, I will select the second option, Deny all users access to this relying party. This option means that users will not have access to the trust unless access to the trust has been granted to them by an administrator. This offers greater security, however, also means that the administrator needs to configure this before any user can use the trust. The next screen of the wizard will show all the information that has been obtained to create the trust. As you can see as I move through the tabs, there is a lot of information that is needed to create a trust. Once I press Next, the trust will be created. On the final screen of the wizard is the tick box Open the Edit Claim Rules dialog for this relying party trust when the wizard closes. In this case, I will clear this option so I can show you how to open this option manually. If I now close the wizard, you can see the rule has been created. To edit it, all I need to do is select it, right-click, and then select the option Edit Claim Rules. This will open a window that will allow the 3 rules associated with that trust to be changed. The first tab is Issuance Transform Rules. This tab allows rules to be transformed before being sent to the other party. For example, you could create a custom rule that modifies the data retrieved from Active Directory and sends it to the other party in a different format. The tab Delegation Authorization Rules allows rules to be created that determine if a requester is allowed to impersonate another user. In this case, I will create a new rule on the tab Issuance Authorization Rules. To do this, I need to press the button Add Rules to start the Rule Creation Wizard. To create the rule, I first need to select a template. Notice that in the list, there are a lot of different templates to choose from. The rules created in here determine who can use the trust. In this case, I will select the option Send Group Membership as a claim. This will allow authentication to happen based on group membership. Once selected, I will move on to the next screen. Here I need to configure some information about the rules. First, I will enter in a meaningful name for the claim. Once entered, I will next configure a group for the claim by pressing the Browse button. In this case, I will use the Domain Users group. If you want to restrict access to particular users, you would need to create your own group and put the users that you want to have access to the trust in that group. In this case, there are 2 domains in the forest, so 2 Domain Users groups have been found. In this case, I will select the Domain User group in the domain IT Free Training. The next option that I will configure is under Outgoing Claim Type. You will notice that there are a lot of options here. The option you choose here will determine what the other side will see. In this particular case, I will select Group. However, a different option could be chosen if you wanted to change what the other party was seeing. At the bottom, notice that you can enter in a value for the claim. In this case, I will enter in Web Application. Essentially, this will accept the group name Domain Users and change it to the group name Web Application. As far as the other party is aware, the group name is Web Application. Once I press Finish, the rule will be created. If I exit out of Edit Claim Rules, notice that the new Relying Party Trust has been configured. Since the rule has been created, it is ready to go. However, before this will work, the Claim Provider Trust must be created on the other side. But I will leave that to an upcoming video. Thanks for watching this video from IT Free Training. I hope to see you in upcoming videos from us on this topic and others. Thanks, and see you next time.